Maize, also known as corn, by far the largest component of the global coarse grain trade. We're looking at 75% of global trade. In this episode of Commodity Brief, we're going to be looking at maize, also known as corn. Corn is produced in fantastic quantities. We're looking at global annual production of about 1 billion tonnes. Here we can see the main centres of production. So we're really looking at Northern America, parts of South America, and very select parts of Africa, Russia, China, and India. In terms of this production itself, in terms of figures, we're looking at United States with about 35% of global production, with about 360 million metric tonnes. China, about 21% of global production, and then we have Brazil and Argentina. In terms of the exports, we're still looking at United States as the largest exporter with about 55 million tonnes exported annually, and then followed by Brazil and Argentina with about 24 million tonnes each on an annual basis. In terms of the trade, maize is dominated by the big four grain traders. We're looking at the ABCD of the grain trading world: ADM, Bunge, Cargill and Dreyfus. And they have very large production facilities and storage facilities around the world. Otherwise, in terms of uses, we're looking at flour production, but also feedstuff for animals and starch. And so there's a reasonably wide range of uses, and obviously, as we know, popcorn. Otherwise, in terms of transportation, mainly it is transported in bulk. And so we're talking about very large quantities, homogeneous cargoes transported in vessels such as this. This would be about 60,000 tonnes of cargo on the vessel. Very large holds in order to be able to load and discharge quickly. You notice there are no cranes. And so this vessel will be trading between ports which were quite developed and have the ability to load and discharge the cargo at the port without the need of cranes on board. Otherwise, we have large storage facilities around the world, and we have to be very careful with the storage of maize because we have to be careful of the moisture and we have to be careful of the ventilation to make sure that there's no overheating of the cargo while it's being stored. In terms of other risks, one of the major risks that we have is infestation. Here we have a picture of maize being eaten by weevils, and so we have to be careful with it. We have to potentially fumigate it and make sure that it's checked on a regular basis. Otherwise, in terms of other risks, we mentioned humidity. So it has to be dried to about 13–14% in order for it to be transported and stored for long periods of time. And we need to be very careful with contamination with other products, but also as far as genetically modified cargo is concerned, because there are parts of the world where even the tiniest percentage of genetically modified cargo will end up having the whole cargo being rejected. And so we have to be very aware of this and where the cargo is coming from and where the cargo is going. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Commodity Brief, looking at maize. Come back soon for future episodes looking at different commodities. Thank you.